Hello, it's me, Celsius. This video was supposed to be the second part of a two-part piece on environmentalism in motorsport, but I noticed that the video was getting way too long, and thus I decided that I would turn it into a three-part mini-series. If you want to watch the first part, you can find it linked in the video description, but you don't necessarily need to watch the first part to understand the second part. The only thing you really need to know from the first part is that at the beginning of automobile history, electric cars were favored over petrol cars, but starting in the first decade of the 20th century, they quickly fell from grace, largely because of their limited range and higher purchasing prices. In recent years, however, electric cars made a bit of a comeback, and the emergence of higher volume manufacturing of electric cars and powertrains has allowed for economies of scale to reduce the costs for the end consumer. While their comparatively limited range and relatively high prices are still weak points of electric cars, they are becoming increasingly feasible for both day-to-day use and motor racing. Right now, there are still types of racing where electric cars are not viable at all because of their limited range, like endurance racing, for example. But in forms of racing where range is not that important, like hill climbing and drag racing, electric race cars have had a niche presence even before their recent resurgence. In this part, I'll cover the recent developments in this field, starting with the first experiments with electric powertrains and hill climbing, starting in the early 1980s, through increased efforts to reduce the carbon footprint of racing through the use of alternative fuels and hybrid technology, starting in the mid-2000s, and ending with the establishment of the first conventional all-electric racing championships and events like Formula E, for example. As I already said, electric race cars have had a niche presence in hill climbing, more specifically in the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, since the early 1980s. For those who are not aware, the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb is an annual automobile and motorcycle hill climb to the summit of Pikes Peak in Colorado, USA. It's the most prestigious hill climb in the world, and the first event was held in 1916, making it the second oldest motor race in the Western Hemisphere, second only to the 5 years older Indianapolis 500. The hill climb has two different events, one for cars and one for motorcycles, both having many different classes encompassing different types of propulsion and cars and bikes of different performance levels respectively. Electric-powered cars have competed with petrol-powered cars since 1981 when Joe Ball reached the summit in a Sears XDH1 electric car. During this first time for an electric race car to conquer the summit in modern times, Joe Ball needed 32 minutes to reach the summit. Since then, however, the times of electric cars have improved over leaps and bounds. And as this diagram shows, while the times of electric cars have been improving massively, the times of petrol-powered cars have remained relatively constant, only improving significantly after electric car times took a nosedive around 2010, causing them to become a real threat to petrol cars. The times for electric cars at Pikes Peak have also improved faster than the times for traditional petrol-powered cars ever did. While it took petrol-powered cars 22 years to break the 16-minute mark in 1938 and 73 more years to break the 10-minute mark, when Nobuhiro Tajima achieved a time of 9 minutes, 51 seconds and 278 1/1000s in the Suzuki SX4. Electric cars took only 11 years of competition to break the 16-minute mark, with Katie Endicott being the first driver to do so, achieving a time of 15 minutes, 44 seconds and 71 1/100ths in her Honda Civic EV Type R in 1994. It would only be 19 more years before the first electric car completed the course in less than 10 minutes in 2013. The driver who achieved this important feat was none other than Nobuhiro Tajima, who had previously been the first to beat the 10-minute mark using petrol power, taking 9 minutes, 44 seconds and 71 1/100ths to complete the course in his electric race car called the E-Runner. Only 1 year after Tajima's under 10-minute run, Greg Tracy came within 3 seconds of winning the race when he finished second in his Mitsubishi Mif Evolution 3. His run was a full 40 seconds faster than Tajima's run a year earlier, at 9 minutes, 8 seconds and 188 1/1000ths, which shows just how quickly electric cars were improving in the competition. 1 year later, Rice Millen made history. When driving a Latvian-made Drive EO PP03, he became the first driver to win the hill climb overall using an electric car. Even more amazingly, according to Rice Millen, the car had lost half of its tractive power due to heat by the halfway point, causing their time to be 30 seconds slower than expected. For the next 2 years, petrol power would be back on top, as Romain Dumas won both races in his Norma M20 RD Honda. In 2018, however, electric power came back with a vengeance, when Romain Dumas, once again, but this time with electric power, won the race overall in his Volkswagen IDR, shattering the outright track record in the process, with a time of 7 minutes, 57 seconds and 148 1/1000. On the bike side of things, the Hillclimb was won overall by an electric bike for the first time, the same year Nobuhiro Tajima beat the 10-minute mark for electric cars, when the late Colin Dunn won the race overall, riding an all-electric Lightning motorcycle LS218, completing the track in 10 minutes and 694 1/1000 of a second. The other niche I mentioned was electric drag racing. In the spring of 1997, the National Electric Drag Racing Association, or NEDRA for short, was founded by a bunch of Ampereheads, as they call themselves. And in 1999, they persuaded the National Hot Rod Association to allow electric cars and motorcycles in their competitions, by axing a rule that existed since the founding of the NHRA, requiring competing cars to have an internal combustion engine. They also persuaded the International Hot Rod Association to do the same as well. Their next milestone came in 2012 when NEDRA became an NHRA alternative sanctioned organization. Today, NEDRA only holds periodic drag racing events with classes divided by voltage, starting at 24 volts and ending with the A5 class for cars with 600 volts or above. NEDRA also keeps track of electric drag racing records using certified equipment. The current quarter-mile record for electric dragsters was set by 87-year-old, yeah, you heard that right, drag racing legend Don Garlitz on July the 20th, 2019 at Palm Beach International Raceway. He completed the quarter mile in 7.235 seconds, reaching a top speed of 304.2 km per hour. For comparison, back before Scott Calliter's fatal crash, when NHRA Top Fuel dragsters still raced on the quarter mile instead of 1,000 feet, drag racing legend Tony Schumacher set the all-time record for the quarter mile, taking only 4.446 seconds and reaching an incredible speed of 543.202 km per hour in 2005. Outside these niches, there has only been one more event since 1987, and it's a little bit odd. It's the World Solar Challenge. First held in 1987, the World Solar Challenge is a biennial, one-way road race for solar-powered cars run on a 3,000 km stretch of road through the Australian outback from Darwin in the Northern Territory to Adelaide in South Australia. According to the Challenge's website, the teams comprise of tertiary and secondary students from over 30 countries and a support team. The Challenge's proclaimed aim is to, quote, stimulate research into and development of sustainable road transport. Starting in the mid-2000s, environmentalism in motorsport started to gain traction, as more and more people started to call for more environmentally friendly ways to conduct auto racing. The first series to respond to this call for more environmentalism was the ill-fated International Formula Master, who planned to use a petrol-electric hybrid engine and regenerative braking system in their cars from the 2007 season onwards. They would, however, later choose not to do so. It was in 2007 that things really started to kick off. In Britain, West Surrey Racing entered their drivers Rob Collard and Colin Turkington into the British Touring Car Championship in bioethanol-fueled MG ZSs, joining privateer Paul O'Neill, who had started racing his bioethanol-fueled Vauxhall Astra in that series 1 year prior. Meanwhile, over in the world of open-wheel racing, Formula One finally took notice. In May of 2007, Formula One called for a meeting in Monaco to discuss the championship's environmental impact. The Honda F1 team had already made a statement for environmentalism 3 months prior, when they announced that they would run a sponsorless car displaying their now famous Earth livery in the 2007 season to bring public awareness to the issue. Honda received mostly cynical responses. Mark Webber, for example, said, "It's good Honda is going green, but there are still 35 private jets parked 20 kilometers down the road." In 2008, the FIA published a press release stating Formula One teams agree that the sport must respond in a responsible way to the environmental challenges we face, followed by supporting statements by the team bosses of Honda F1 team, Williams F1 team, and BMW Motorsport. In 2009, F1 introduced the Kinetic Energy Recovery System, or KERS for short. It recovered kinetic energy that would otherwise be effectively lost as heat or sound energy under braking and fed it into a battery, which in turn would supply extra power on demand. This, of course, prepared the series for the introduction of a more advanced and more involved hybrid system simply called the Energy Recovery System, or ERS for short, in 2014. This new system, while retaining the old KERS system as a subsystem, renaming it ERSK, also added a means of recovering wasted heat energy being dispelled from the newly introduced turbocharger via a heat motor generator unit. The new system could also provide more power over a longer period of time, and unlike the KERS, its power delivery was largely automatic. In addition to switching to a proper hybrid system, F1 also switched from naturally aspirated V8 engines to turbocharged, smaller displacement V6 engines that year, further improving the championship's carbon footprint. Other open-wheel racing championships didn't wait around, however. Indycar reduced its carbon footprint by making a relatively small switch from methanol, a non-renewable fossil fuel made from natural gas used in IndyCar racing since the mid-1960s, to more environmentally friendly and renewable bioethanol. European open-wheel championships also made efforts to go greener. The British Formula 4 Championship considered changing to bioethanol fuel for the 2007 season in December of 2006, although 3 months later the series moved the plans to the 2008 season instead. In July of 2007, the World Series by Renault became the first major European open-wheel championship to announce a move to biofuel. The new car would be used from the 2008 season onwards. This move to biofuel would take the form of a feature called flex fuel technology, enabling the car to run on either E85 bioethanol or premium unleaded petrol. Over in the world of motorcycle racing, recognition for the issue rose as well. On the Isle of Man, home to the legendary Isle of Man TT motorcycle road race, engineer Peter Hindley and civil servant Brian Hammond had proposed the idea of a zero carbon emission TT motorcycle race to the local government in 2008. Their concept would hunker back to the original concept of the Isle of Man TT, valuing fuel efficiency as well as speed. It was approved, and the event would take place during the 2009 Isle of Man TT as the TTXGP. The race would last one lap on the island's over 60-kilometer long Sneefell mountain course as a support event for that year's Isle of Man TT. After this first successful event, the organizers of TTXGP entered into talks with the Fédération Internationale de Motorcyclisme, the international governing body for motorcycle racing, about an FIM-sanctioned race series organized by TTXGP and run according to their rules. In this process, TTXGP shared its rulebook with the FIM, and things reportedly looked rather rosy at first, but soon the talks broke down. According to motorcyclenews.com, talks broke down when the FIM suddenly, despite an agreement already being in place, threatened to remove their backing if they were not paid $500,000, only to then demand full rights to the series. When TTXGP understandably refused, the FIM said that TTXGP could no longer use their rulebook, making it exclusive to the FIM's hastily organized e-Power series. In January of 2010, TTXGP announced a season starting at Infineon Raceway, Sonoma, California, that would include races in Canada, Italy, and the UK, culminating in a world finale in Albacete, Spain. When they subsequently talked with the Isle of Man government about another race during the 2010 Isle of Man TT, they found that the Isle of Man Department of Tourism and Leisure would rather hold its own very similar event dubbed the TT0 without the involvement of TTXGP. It seems like there were no long-lasting hard feelings between TTXGP and the FIM though, despite how ugly their talks ended. As in 2011, only about a year and a half after the split, the two organizations announced in a joint press release a collaboration where they would combine 3 events of their respective championships into one. In 2013, TTXGP and the FIM finally fully came together, and the FIM E-Road Racing World Cup was established. However, after only a single botched season, it was discontinued. As for the TT0, that event has been held continuously since 2010 with no end in sight. Things started to change in the world of endurance sports car racing as well. In 2012, the FIA and the ACO established the World Endurance Championship to replace the ill-fated Intercontinental Le Mans Cup. Hybrid technology has been in use in the WEC's top class since its inception, and more recently it has been a requirement at the absolute top. As of 2020, the top class of the WEC is the LMP1 hybrid class. However, a new class of cars dubbed hypercars is waiting in the wings. The new hypercars will still have hybrid technology, but to a lesser degree than the current LMP1 hybrid cars. The change became necessary after both Porsche and Audi dropped out, leaving Toyota as the sole competitor in the top class. Let's not talk about this any longer, because I bet if you are in any way interested in endurance racing, you already knew about all of this. But I can probably tell you about something you weren't aware of until now, so let's go. In September of 2018, the ACO announced its plan to bring hydrogen-powered cars to Le Mans by 2024 as part of what they call Mission H24. Mission H24 is a partnership between the ACO and Swiss company Green GT, who produce electric hydrogen propulsion systems and previously completed the first hydrogen-powered lap of the Circuit de la Sarthe in 2016. According to the ACO, the main purpose of the initiative is to foster the development of hydrogen-powered vehicles ahead of their anticipated Le Mans debut in 2024. The start of the program was celebrated in the lead-up to the 2018 4 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps. There were 2 main activities during that weekend in relation to the program. The first activity consisted of Yannick Dalmas doing a demonstration lap around the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in an experimental hydrogen-powered prototype on Saturday. On Sunday, the car was then supposed to lead the field during the formation lap. The car, called the LMP2 H2G, was a modified ADAS 03 LMP3 car powered by 4 electric motors with a 4-stack hydrogen fuel cell as the power source. During said demonstration lap, things apparently didn't go according to plan though. The car started the lap at speed but appeared to have some type of problem at Staffelo corner before slowly returning to the pits for a fuel stop demonstration. At the event, ACO President Pierre Filon said, "Hydrogen is the future because we are aiming for zero emission mobility." Electric power had already made it to Le Mans in 2014 when Nissan entered their hybrid Nissan ZEOD RC in the experimental Garage 56 class at Le Mans. Even though the ZEOD RC was a hybrid car, it could also drive on electric power only, which it did for one lap, becoming the first car to complete an all-electric lap of the Circuit de la Sarthe. Sadly, the car broke down in the race after only 5 laps due to gearbox problems. Let's get back to open wheel racing. Very recently, in 2014, the FIA Formula E Championship has been established as the first mainstream all-electric racing championship. The ABB Formula E Championship was conceived during a dinner in Paris on March 3, 2011 by FIA President John Todt, businessman Alejandro Agag, and then sitting President of the European Parliament Antonio Tajani. They wanted to create a racing championship contested solely by electric cars, held on the streets of the world's leading cities. 3.5 years later, their vision had become reality, and the inaugural race of the championship took place in Beijing on the 13th of September 2014. Staying true to their founders' original vision, all Formula E races are held on street circuits in big and busy cities in the European winter and spring. Since the Formula E Championship is a spec championship, all teams currently use the same Spark SRT-05E car. The powertrain itself, along with the gearbox and the suspension, has been open to private development by the individual teams, however. Nonetheless, the power output of the engine is capped at a maximum of 265 kilowatts if both fan boost and attack mode are active, and 200 kilowatts under normal race operations. In real units, that's 355 horsepower and 270 horsepower respectively. Top speed is also capped at 280 kilometers per hour. If you are not following Formula E, you are maybe wondering what the feck fan boost and attack mode are. They are both new concepts that were brought in to give races a new twist and differentiate the series from other similar open-wheel championships. Attack mode works as follows. Drivers have to arm it by driving through an activation zone, which is typically outside the conventional racing line, to get a temporary power boost of 46 horsepower. Drivers must activate but not complete attack mode a set number of times per race, and the length of the individual power boosts, as well as the number of boosts required, will vary race by race. With fan boost, the fans can choose 5 drivers who get an additional 5-second power boost at one point during the second half of the race. Energy saving is a big part of the championship, since there are no recharging stops, but the range of the cars has improved significantly in the last 6 years. While with the first generation car, drivers had to switch cars mid-race to achieve a driving time of roughly 45 minutes, the second generation car allows for 45-minute races without car switching mid-race. The future looks bright as well for Formula E, as starting with the upcoming 2020-2021 season, Formula E will officially become a world championship. I want to finish this segment off by talking about the small race championships that usually fly under the radar. Let's start with a championship that's still relatively big. In 2010, in what was a first for professional motorsport, the French ice racing championship Andros Trophy introduced an all-electric class during the off-season. The car, developed by Hexagon Engineering, had a weight of no more than 800 kilograms and was powered by a 3-phase AC electric motor providing 122 horsepower and 200 Newton meters of torque. After the 2017-2018 season, the series introduced a new, more powerful model, also built by Hexagon, into its top Elite Pro category. The new car had both 4-wheel drive and 4-wheel steering, as well as twin electric motors capable of producing the equivalent of 350 horsepower, generating a whopping 1600 Newton meters of torque in the process. In June of 2019, the championship went one step further when it announced that it would switch its top class to being fully electric, starting with the 2019-2020 season. Even though this video is already getting very long, I still want to bring attention to 2 more very small, fully electric racing championships that would otherwise go unnoticed. In Italy, there's a touring car championship called the Smart EQ Fortwo E-Cup. The championship uses a race version of the all-electric Smart EQ Fortwo and claims to be the first all-electric tourist championship. At least that's how DBEL Translator translated the statement on their website. The inaugural season was held in 2018 with rounds in Turin, Misano, Milan, Vallelunga and Mugello. As of July 28, 2020, the day I'm writing this, the series seems to be alive and well. The Cup's 2020 season, initially delayed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, has just commenced with a round on the Autodromo dell'Umbria on the weekend of July the 26th. Before we briefly go over to motorcycle country to finish this segment off, I want to bring your attention to an unusual little racing championship. Said championship, called EcoGP, is significant because, among other things, it runs all-electric endurance races. Yeah, you heard that right. Their endurance races are a bit different, however, compared to traditional endurance races. It's not about who comes to the finish first and wins on outright pace, but rather about who completes the most laps. This may be a bit confusing because the driver who completes the most laps will usually win the race, but this time it's different. The drivers are not supposed to drive as fast as possible, but rather are supposed to find the right balance between efficiency and speed. You don't even need a fancy race car to compete. A normal run-of-the-mill electric road car is all you need. In 2018 and 2019, EcoGP just organized a single 24-hour race at Oschersleben, Germany, but this year there were supposed to be 3 races. 2 would have been one-way road races at Schauinsland in southwest Germany and Zell am See, Austria in July and November respectively, and the other would have been a 24-hour race at Hockenheim. However, the recent pandemic has changed everything up a little bit. The Schauinsland race has already taken place as the Schauinsland Hill Challenge, but the road race at Zell am See and the Hockenheim 24-hour race have both been cancelled. They have been replaced by 24-hour challenge events at the Eurospeedway Lausitz in Germany and Autodrom Most in Czechia. Over in motorcycle land, the FIM has finally revived the idea of the ill-fated FIM E-Road Racing World Cup, with the establishment of the MotoE World Cup in 2019. All competitors are using a racing version of the Indycar Eco Corsa electric motorcycle. The bikes are powered by a synchronous oil-cooled AC electric motor with permanent magnets delivering 147 horsepower and 220 Nm of torque, accelerating the bike from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds and allowing the bikes to reach a top speed of 270 km/h. Originally, the first season was meant to commence on May the 5th at Jerez, but the Jerez round as well as the following round at Le Mans had to be cancelled because, and that is no joke, all of the bikes intended for the competition were destroyed in a paddock fire during a pre-season test at Jerez. Thankfully, the fire was just a temporary roadblock, and a revised calendar was announced the same month. The new and revised calendar featured 6 races at 4 circuits. At the end of the season, Matteo Ferrari had become the first MotoE champion. As I already said in the introduction, originally there was not supposed to be a third part, but oh well. In the aforementioned third part, I'll take a look at what the future holds for environmentalism in motorsport. I hope you found this video interesting, and if that's the case, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Also consider checking out some of the other videos on my channel, especially the first and third part of this series. If the third part is already out, it will be linked in the video description just like the first part. Also in the video description you can find a link to the pastebin document where all of the sources for this part and the third part are listed with their corresponding numbers. Anyway, that was it for this video. See ya.